Hi guys, welcome to Trail Talk. I'm your host Aaron Mullins. This week I've got an amazing interview with Brian Mullins, second place at the Tour de Glaciers, 450 kilometers. He's also stacked some unbelievable races back to back to back. He's the type of guy that's doing 500, 400, 300 kilometers week in, week out, and doing these races as training for other big adventures. And it's obviously working for him. So we've just finished recording, so I'm excited to bring you the interview with Brian Mullins. Before we get there, check out our sponsors, Tantrums, the best packs in the game, Trail Talk, 15 for 15% discount. Link is in the description. Also XMiles for all your nutrition. Link in the description for 10% off. And also GOREWEAR, discount code IRunOverMountains30 for 30% off at GOREWEAR. It's pretty good. Use their discounts and they support us. That's how it works. Anyway, guys, let's go and roll the interview with Brian. Brian Mullins, welcome to Trail Talk. First off, congratulations on your amazing second place at the Tour de Glaciers, 450 kilometers, just a couple of weeks ago at this point. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? Let us know where you are and how you feeling after the big adventure.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. You're a lucky man. I spent 10 years trying to avoid podcasts and kind of general media in real terms. So yeah, you're the first man to snare me. Yeah, look, thanks for the wishes in relation to the second place. It was unexpected. Look, I'm a runner from Ireland. Basically been at it for about 20 odd years. I'm based in kind of 20 minutes outside Cork City, in a small little village called Carrigadrohid. And that's pretty much where I base all my running out of. My main training areas are probably 40 minutes away in the highest mountains in Ireland, to McGillicuddy Reeks. So that's pretty much my training ground. And I suppose, as I say, getting into running probably only happened in the last 20 years. Before that, I would have been doing a lot of hill walking, kind of brought up in standard Irish family, GA, soccer, that kind of stuff. But my father was kind of into hill walking. So we, like 7, 8 onwards, I was the guy at the back of the pack with my parents and brother and sister kind of going, are we there yet? So yeah, spent about probably 10 or 11 years being dragged up hills all around Ireland and further afield on family holidays, such as Snowdonia and Scotland and the Alps. So yeah, that's kind of a general overview of, I suppose, how I got into the mountains for starters, but kind of transitioned into running at a later date.
The base building started early then, you would say?
Yeah. Unbeknown to me, the base building started early. I didn't know what I was being let in for, but yeah, go on.
It worked fine for Killian getting dragged from hut to hut as an infant.
Exactly. So yeah, there's a lesson there for everyone.
So I've known of you by name, but we only met in Cormier or last month. But I've known, I'm from about 30-40 minutes from Mourne, and you're 30-40 minutes from Kerry, and they're like the diagonal opposites of the country. So I'd never met you in person, and we'd never crossed paths in any of the IMRA races. I never ever went down that far until I think 2020 when I did the Kerry Way Ultra. But you're known on the circuit or the scene in Ireland as kind of an adventurer and someone that does tackle the big things. How did you kind of get into the sport, and like from what triggered the getting into running, and what's kind of your sporting background?
Yeah, so as I say, I suppose it was hill walking up to before I started college. When I started college, I started getting more into the technical side of mountaineering and alpinism, and kind of went to the Alps every year with like-minded individuals in a number of Scottish winters. And to be honest, I saw my trajectory as going down the road of being an alpine guide, and that was kind of my thinking during college, despite the fact I was doing a degree in electrical engineering. Half the time I was basically head inside in books, reading the likes of Bonatti and Herman Buell and these guys, and the stuff that they were doing back in the day, which, is still crazy when you can consider what's being done now. But yeah, I went from that just after college and had, I suppose, 2 life-changing moments. One was I nearly got killed myself, soloing in the Alps. And number 2, my climbing partner did get killed So I took a big step back from, I suppose, the really serious kind of technical alpinism we were doing, because the old story of there were old climbers and bold climbers, but there are no old bold climbers kind of rang true. And I kind of took a step back from alpinism, but still went to the mountains a lot, but kind of moving fast in the mountains, but not really for any purpose apart from going for a holiday every year to the Alps, to do a few, I suppose, 4,000 meter peaks. Nothing technical, just ordinary routes, things like that, or classic climbs. So well within my capabilities. But then, I think when I was 26 or 27, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I suppose I basically changed my, training regime completely after that. So I kind of figured out fairly quickly that the fitter you were, the easier it was to control. So I just started running, and joined the local running club here in Cork, St. Fin's. And got into, I suppose, the road scene more than anything else for a couple of years, 5 milers, 10 milers, a city marathon a year, that kind of thing. And kind of built up training kind of jointly between kind of road training, but also training that I would have learned from the days of alpinism. So kind of mixing the two together, and found I was kind of good at running over the mountains quickly. So kind of got into the Emma races first of all, and also every year I'd go to the Alps. I'd try and pick off a local race in the area I was in. So the likes of this year's Inals and Dolomite Sky races, I just did them simply because I was in the area, not because they meant anything to me at the time. But yeah, I got an eye opener into the actual level of competition that was at these things. So yeah, it kind of spurred me on to get a bit better.
Looking back at your results on IMRA, the Irish Mountain Running website, the racing starts in 2007, but it wasn't really until 2017 when, like, you were doing races every year, but from 2017 there was like a step improvement in results, and I think there was 9 races, 8 or 9 races, 7 podiums, and I think 3 of them were wins. What was that like? That first 10 years of mountain running, what was the mindset? What was the process? And then what happened to make you take that step forward?
Yeah, I suppose the process was, number one, as I was saying, controlling diabetes, but I kind of got sucked into the road running kind of bug. I find it absolutely, utterly boring now, but back then I was chasing times, so beating your last 5 mile time, beating your last 10 mile time. So I was focused on a lot of, we'll say, going to the track twice a week, training with St. Finn bars, and it was great. It got great speed in my legs, which has paid dividends later in life. But I suppose I stayed at that probably for longer than I probably should have. I didn't actually go away from the mountains, but I was spending less time in them. And over that period, I realized that actually road running is great, but you can only go so far, and the clock is ticking. I'm not getting any younger, so the times won't be going down as quickly as they were after the first couple of years. So when you kind of reach a plateau, you realize that you have to really ramp up training volumes and kind of methodologies to get better at the roads. Whereas I had 20 years of experience in the hills, and I found I didn't have to train as much to basically progress as quickly, simply because there was plenty, I suppose, in the legs from 20 years of training, carrying big packs of ropes and stuff up mountains, so it all helped. After around 2015, 2016, I finished my, I don't know, second or third last road marathon I did, and decided that, it was back to the mountains for me. I seem to be getting good at the likes of the long 100Ks, so I call them long now, but they're short, really, when you consider what I'm doing. So yeah, I started Trans-Gran Canarias and Madeira Islands and things like that, finishing in kind of the top 100. And it just, again, it's like everything, you want to get better. So you increase the volume, but you kind of increase it, I suppose, strategically, so you don't burn yourself out. And it takes a bit of time. You can't do it in 1 year, so that's why it took a few years to build it up.
Whenever you say not increasing the volume too quickly, that's not something I was expecting to hear from you.
Okay.
Whenever I see some of the doubles that you've done this year and some of the training or racing or training races, I suppose you're probably thinking of these last year. One thing that I've noticed from your race history is you are interested in the more extreme races. Like when I look down through some of your results, there are races that interest me, the likes of Trofeo Quema, Ultrax, Pika Pika. Talk a bit about why these races are what's kind of pulling you towards them.
Yeah, I kind of enjoy those races simply because they're kind of more, I suppose, alpinism based. There's a lot of technical ground to be covered. And I suppose based on my experience, I know I can cover that ground faster than a lot of people. You don't have to be a really fast, flat lowlander to carry out, I suppose, fast maneuvers and kind of rocky ground or kind of steel cables via ferrata. So yeah, that's kind of what I suppose drew me to those races. The Sky Race circuit I've done a couple of times, couple of races, and they're really the kind of races that I enjoy. However, they're, as you well know, they're kind of short. So, when you're getting older, you're just not going to get quicker at them. While you will be competitive because of your kind of background, you won't be really up there. So I think I did Dolomite Sky Race in 2013, and like you finish an hour behind Killian Jornet, and you're kind of going, yeah, that's about as good as it gets. On to the next one.
You need to enjoy it at that point.
Exactly. Yeah, but the likes of Trofeo Kima, yeah, that was probably one of the highlights. That's probably one of the best races out there that I've ever done. It's unbelievable.
I was expecting to see the Grinja Sky Marathon on your list as well. I guess that's probably in your bucket list.
Yeah, it's on the list. Yeah, not for next year, but yeah, probably the year after.
Right. So, like, what do you consider your strengths as a runner? Just you've referenced there about sky running, and then we've talked about these longer distance races. And honestly, if you think about Trofeo Kima and Pika Pika, they're almost like ultra distance sky races. They have that technicality, that it's that type of terrain. They're just super long, so you're going slower, and because of the distance. What are your strengths and in these types of events?
Yeah, strengths, I suppose, because you're coming from Ireland where there's not much altitude. The altitude is something that kind of kills you, so you have to, I suppose, train specifically for that altitude and heat. But I suppose the key strengths are I'm pretty good at running uphill, and I'm very good at running downhill. In fact, I was so good at running downhill, I did myself a ridiculous injury back in 2008 and lost 2 years of a season because I dislocated my ankle and snapped two of the ligaments on the outside of it coming down off Carntool on a training run. So yeah, I'm once that kind of repaired itself, I got back into running at a serious pace. But yeah, I absolutely hate running in the flat now. But uphill and downhill, I'm pretty fast as most. And most of that training would come from the likes of the days of alpinism, just going long and far. You could be out there for 36 hours without sleep. And you'd learn all that from kind of trial and error back in the day, but also reading books. The likes of Mark Twight, he'd be a guy that I'd have read a lot over the years in the 90s and 2000s. He was a guy that was American climber that was out there doing some really serious stuff, but completely changing the game as regards training. It's if you ever get a chance to read it, Extreme Alpinism, it's an impressive book.
So, what are the things that you will do in recent years then to cope with the altitude and the heat? It's not like we're going to the Alps and experiencing bog. I mean, what would the Italians do if they came and raced in Ireland? would they be doing some bog training?
No,
what are you doing for altitude?
The Italians would turn around and go home back to their own country. But yeah, like I suppose I learned very quickly when I was even climbing back when I was in my 20s. The quickest way to acclimatise was actually just to go to Chamonix and get a Gildy Midi cable car up to 3,900 metres and sit there reading a book for the day. There wasn't much point going out for a week and a half and running yourself into the ground up high, because it's of little value. So even this year for Tower 450, the kind of schedule I had planned myself over the year, I'd always go out kind of to the Alps in June and do a race to kind of kick the body into altitude mode, come home for a couple of weeks, go back out then for 2 weeks. And that's my whole point about doing 2 back-to-back races very quickly, because it really kind of depletes the body, but also allows the body to basically, I suppose, be shocked into, yeah, this isn't going away, or you're out here for a while to start to train for altitude. It's a good way of getting the red blood cells going. And then I would probably go to before a race 2 or 3 weeks before it, purely to walk around them with a pack. I do the odd day of a hill session or a tempo run for 2 or 3 hours, but yeah, it would be mainly long days in the hills out there, not exerting myself, just being up high. And then I'd come home about 2 weeks before the main race I had, which was Tour this year. And that's typically it. There's no rocket science to it. I mean, it's pretty much well documented now what works for most people. There are some freaks that can basically arrive off the plane and do whatever they want, but yeah, I'm not one of them.
I do see that a lot with the front runners in Tour, that they are going out there and just moving slowly with a pack for a week, 10 days, couple of weeks, maybe early August. A month before the race, or some people right up to a week before the race. but it's not something that you see whenever runners are training for, let's say, a UTMB. I mean, when I say UTMB, I'm talking about the finale, as we kind of have to call it now, but I'm refer like that type of 20-something hour ultra trail for a front runner. Why do you think that's different? Like the train, the we would train slow and long with a heavier pack for something like Tour.
Yeah, it comes down to, I suppose, this UTMB being so fast now. Like I did UTMB in 2019 in, I don't know, about 32 or 33 hours. I had great ambitions to do it in around 27, but again, started too fast, hadn't trained at the altitude at that speed, and it basically just kicks your ass. Whereas, you know, if you go out training for the likes of a Tour, you know you're going to be out there for at least 4 days. There's little point in starting off like the hammers of hell at full tilt. You know it's going to be a long sufferfest. So you just basically try and stick to a pace that you can maintain. So in order to kind of train for that, you're better off wearing a heavier pack so that your legs are basically being trained to fatigue, so that when you take the pack off and put on a smaller pack for Tour, it actually feels easy. Whereas in UTMB nowadays, people are carrying race belts. They're carrying nothing. You know, so it's a completely different mindset. It's turned into kind of, I suppose, nearly the kind of 5K race in real terms. Not thing to say for UTMB, but yeah, it's too short and too fast.
What has happened to the world that this is the sort of things that we're saying? TMB has definitely changed a lot in the last 10 years, and maybe it feels like 2019 when Pau Capel blasted it from the start and won it seemed to be that tipping moment when everyone thought, oh, hold on, I need to do that, otherwise someone else might do it and they'll beat me.
Exactly. I was there the first year UTMB was ran, and you could have walked up and entered on the day. So it's gone from 30 people to, you know yourself, 2,000. So it's amazing how quickly it's after springing into life.
You've been around and been visiting or participating in these races before they were cool or known, or there was Instagram or big marketing budgets, or even, you know, sponsorship in many of these races. How did you find out about UTMB and Tour and these other things that are now, you know, very well known?
Yeah, a lot of it was being out there when I was in the days I was climbing. I'd learn about them. Like nearly every alpine town has a race up to the highest mountain closest to it and back down. So that's kind of how you'd figure out how a lot of them were. And just by talking to people you were racing with in those, and they'd tell you about a better one or a longer one or one you have to do, and it kind of got you thinking. And it was the early days of the internet, so there wasn't too many people, as you say, kind of marketing them or anything. So they were actually hard to find. So like races that I've done in Norway, like Scala Up, it's no longer in operation, but it's one of the hardest races I've ever done. Like 2,000 meters straight from a fjord in less than 5 miles. It's an absolute lung buster, but a great race. And the only way you'd ever find out about it is from talking to a Norwegian that you might have met at a race in Europe. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that you'd find out about. And I would have done a lot of races in the UK, I suppose, back in the 2011, 2012, the Three Peaks race in Yorkshire a couple of times, and I suppose the Ben Nevis race and Snowdon race. And you'd have international runners coming over to those, and you kind of just be chatting to them, and they'd tell you about all the great goodies that they had in Europe that you had to try. So yeah, that was it. That's pretty much how I found out about most of them.
In the earlier years, it looked like that Three Peaks race was something that you were doing each season, maybe as a fitness test to see how you were feeling.
Pretty much, yeah. It was the fitness test for the first kind of, I think, 2012 to 2015. I did the Three Peaks every year, trying to progress my time and beat it, but I could never get beyond about, I think, 350 or something for it, which was, you know, back when I look at it now, it was kind of, Jesus, that's still very slow. But yeah, after a couple of years of doing that, I kind of went up to longer distances. So I'd say you'd probably see in ITRA results or something after that. I went to the likes of Trans Gran Canaria. So I got sick of going to Yorkshire in the middle of winter. Basically, it's spring, but it was still winter. So I said time to get a bit heat training in here. So yeah, went to Trans Gran Canaria and did that for a couple of years.
Looking at your history with Tour, you first ran it in 2022, 103 hours, and then 2023, 90 hours. I think 90 hours, is that right? So significant improvement, and I mean, probably to be expected as well when you're going back to something like that with such experience. But what is the pull that keeps drawing you back? to the Tour de Chant?
Yeah, I first heard about the Tour back in 2010 in its first running, and I nearly entered it the following year. But luckily, I was dragged to a climbing expedition somewhere else in Slovenia, so it kind of fell off the radar. And I planned to do it then in 2020, but COVID hit, so I ended up running across Switzerland twice on 2020 and 2021 on their national routes, which is a great outing if anybody wants to do it. Just take a fast pack and off you go. But yeah, Tour on 2022 again. I felt time was right. I was after building up a fairly significant body of training over the past couple of years, and hit it with the expectation that I'd try my best to get under 100 hours. That's kind of a thing that you kind of want to do. But yeah, I got injured, I suppose, on the last day, and it kind of impacted me and my fellow Irishman, Billy Reid. I still have to thank him for lingering with me in the last couple of hours of the race. But yeah, and after that race, I kind of thought to myself, yeah, there's hours to be gained here. So yeah, I kind of set out what I thought I might be able to achieve if the weather was still good. I said about 15 hours, came in 13 hours less than the following year. So I kind of knew, yeah, that can't really be improved on. And when I see the likes of Emma Stewart winning it that year, you just kind of go, yeah, ain't going to improve on that. So that's why I kind of moved up to the Tour 450. And the likes of the Paul Tierney's and Ian Keats had already done, so they were kind of indicating, yeah, it's a great one to do, but don't say you weren't warned. It's a sufferfest, and it is, and to be honest, it kind of suits me better, I think, because again, like everything, Tour 330 is now just getting too fast.
Yeah, we see it. We see the same ends that are filtering up just much slower to Tour. And I had a conversation with someone in GOREWEAR last month, and we were just saying that, how many years do we think before Tour is the size of UTMB 10 years ago? Because it's getting busier, it's getting bigger, and the kind of the mindset that leads people to the 100 miles, although Tour at the 200 miles, the 330 plus kilometers, it might be a couple of steps. So I think some people don't make that step, but it's still a step. And the Tour de Gent is I guess it's the premier race of that distance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. To be honest, if you look around, you have the Swiss Peaks, and crossing Switzerland and a few others, and they're every bit as technical and every bit as hard. But I suppose they're probably another 5 or 7 years behind where Tour is now. But you can see them building as well. The first year I ran crossing Switzerland, it was, I suppose, smallish enough compared to Tour, but this year the entry list is kind of increasing in size at a rapid rate. And Swiss Peaks is after growing at a crazy rate as well. I mean, next year it's going to be pretty big as well. So yeah, it seems to be that the longer stuff is getting more and more, I suppose, on people's radars. And as you say, a lot of people don't make the step up because I suppose they can't handle the days of sleep deprivation. I seem to be able to deal with it reasonably well enough. But yeah, it takes a different kind of mindset, I suppose, to progress through second night, third night, fourth night on minimal sleep.
I think one of the things that I see with mindset, the difference with the people who I'm meeting that are doing Tour 450 and to a lesser extent the 330, but the theme feels like they're not overthinkers. They're more into adventure and just going out and dealing with what's in front of them. Whereas I think what I see in like the UTMB, there's the planning and the over planning and the procrastination about this, that, and the other. So I think there is a different mindset for the people that gravitate to the super long distance.
Yeah, no, there is. And if you look at a lot of the winners of Tour 450, a lot of them would come from adventure racing or kind of an alpinism background, because you gotta want to be there. You're not there to break a record. You're not there to, you're not even thinking about winning the race. You're thinking about finishing. And basically you're thinking that this is going to be a long outing. There's going to be lots of problems. Solve every problem. You get to the end. That's pretty much the mindset you need to be in. Forget about racing. Forget about anything like that. Especially for the first couple of days. It's all about just getting the miles through you, and making sure that any particular problem that comes up, solve it quickly before it gets worse. As I learned to my cost this year in the Tour 450, which was, I let a few things go for too long and they ended up nearly killing my race, but I just got them in time.
Before we come on to this year's 450, what was it? I read in one of your posts about the flow state at the Eiger 250 where you finished second. I want to dig into that because I want to know, like, how did you get to that point? What do you think was the ingredients to find that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just, I suppose, you're not pushing yourself too hard, but you know what you have to do to get to where you need to get to. And as long as you can make it feel easy, it actually is easy. Whereas if you start, we'll say in this case, the Eiger 250, and you blast up under the Eiger North Wall on the first time and you're gasping for breath and you're dying on your feet, basically, it's not fun. Nobody likes that. So if you just start off reasonable enough, chatting away with people, and just eventually you turn around and 20 minutes later, you've 300 or 400 meters gone. 20 hours later, you've got 100K gone, and you're kind of going, geez, that went quick. And it's that type of state. You don't even know you're doing it. And your body seems to take care of itself. It knows when to eat. It knows when to drink. You're not into metrics about I need 120 grams of carb in 30 seconds and all this kind of stuff that's being paraded around the place and all that kind of crack. It's very simple stuff. But it's when you basically get into a kind of mindset that, this is actually easy. I've trained for it. Just go out and do it. Forget about everybody else. Run your own race. And that's it.
I'm glad you mentioned the carbs and the grams per hour and this whole thing that we just hear. It's so much marketing noise that then people are talking about because it's being forced on our screens, and it's kind of interesting. I was chatting to somebody after whenever I was fast packing the tour, and the first day I thought I kind of was running late because the internet was rubbish in Cormier and I couldn't get the podcast from the night before with Ricky uploaded, right? So it was late starting and I thought I'll grab something to eat on my way through the Thule. So I started off with 2 Cliff Bars, but obviously, we know what these Italian villages and towns are like. There's nothing ever open.
Yep.
Ever. So I did the full first day on 2 Cliff Bars, and I was like, you know what? I didn't actually get too hungry. I maybe drank a bit more water to, if I started to feel like I was getting a bit hungry. And I came out of that thinking, I think I'll be grand just buying, a couple of Mars bars, a couple of Bounties in the hut for the next day, and I'll be fine at that. Like, what way are you thinking about nutrition for these long adventures? Are you planning out, I got to eat something every hour, I need to hit so many calories, so many carbs? What's the mindset for these types of adventures?
Yeah, when it comes to races this long, I don't plan anything for nutrition because it's pointless. What I do is eat to hunger, drink to thirst, and it doesn't matter what it is. I'll stuff it back my throat, despite the fact I'm a diabetic. When it comes to a race like this, I do eat carbs because you kind of basically you're not going to get anything but pasta in a lot of these refugios on the Tour 450, so you can't depend on the likes of cheese or meat. I suppose back in the day when I was doing alpinism, you'd go for 20 hours, 30 hours with nothing. Packet of M&Ms, and it was you were trained to do that. Like, that was the kind of things you were reading in the books I was speaking about. So, like, you do depletion days, so you do 2 days back to back with eating nothing, letting your body consume itself. You've plenty fat stores, you can go forever. All you need is water. So a lot of the stuff that's marketed nowadays about you need this every 30 minutes and that electrolyte every 10 seconds, it's all just madness. There's no need for it. As I say, we'll get onto it in the Tour race, but like after 7 hours, I puked everything up that I had eaten for 7 hours before that, and walked out the door of Refuge de Fires and kept going, and ate nothing for a while after that, and it was grand. So it's a lot of it is just don't believe the marketing hype. Just listen to your body.
So last thing on nutrition, what was in your pack whenever you started? When you started the race, what did you have?
Yeah, last year I was concerned about the distance between the refugios, so my pack was probably at least 2 kilograms heavier with a lot of food. This year I brought hardly anything. I think I brought 1 naked bar and one, I'd say, one kind of flapjack or something. That was it.
You'll be blowing people's mind.
but I didn't use either of them.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, let's move on and get into this year's race. I'd love really to just hand the mic to you, and let's talk about how you break the adventure up. Obviously, in the 450, it's much different than the 330 where you have the life bases essentially every 50-ish K. The 450 you have to super self-sufficient and you have to go a lot longer before you get your bag. You have to get the Konya, which is like 160k. You've got to do more than a U10B before you get to your bag. 11,000 meters of verts. Talk us about that first section and how you break the 450 up mentally.
Yeah, mentally it's I suppose, yeah, as you're right, you have I suppose from speaking to the likes of the last year's women's winner, Sarah Hansel, and a few others that would have been up at the pointy end of the race over the last couple of years, it's all about, I suppose, concerning yourself, with the first long section, which is what you say, the 160k to Konya, but not forgetting about the 160k at the end from Gressenay, which is probably the hardest part because it's going to take you longer. But the key thing is to not even concern yourself with, I suppose, 4 days of hence. You're basically going from refugio to refugio. That's it. And now the refugios are a lot further apart than what you'd have on the Tor 330. So you're not going to be out there for 4 or 5 hours between them. So you just got to make sure that whatever you've got in your race pack is going to get you to the next refugio, irrespective of what the weather is like. Now, this year we had brilliant weather, so it was pretty good for most of it, apart from the second day. We got a bit of snow. But yeah, I mean, it's basically you just think of, okay, I'm starting in Comeriour. What's the first refugio? It's Maison-Vie. It's only 5k away, but it's still 1,000 meters up. So what do I need to get to there? Not much, to be honest. It's very early in the race, so you basically take very little. They serve the usual aid station stuff at Maison-Vie, but to be honest, this year I just passed it straight by because it just felt so good, to be honest. I was motoring fairly quick. And then the next one is probably another 15k away in Refugio Elisabetta. And last year I wasted so much time there guzzling soup and cakes and coffee, and no need for it. Like, I didn't need it, but I had it in my head. The next one is a long way away. You got to eat now because you need to stock up. Whereas this year I took nothing. I just had a quick drink of soup out of a cup and walked out the door. And that's key. It's one of the things you learn very quickly from a lot of former Tour competitors. Don't waste time. Like, you can waste hours in life bases and refugios because they're so, like, when you come in after 5 or 6 hours out in the hill, it's great to sit down and everybody's around and it feels like, I'm not leaving here. This is great. Why would you go out the door? But it's a race. Get out the door. So it's that type of thing. And you just keep going like that. And obviously each refugio has a different fare and offer, but each refugio is at a different distance as well and may have different climbs in between. So sometimes you might be going 1,000 meters of ascent and 2,000 meters of descent, and the other times it might be the complete opposite. So you have to kind of strategically plan exactly how you're going to approach that section. And then you also have to decide where you might or might not want to sleep. And I suppose I was told very early on last year that it's very important in Tour 450 to get as far as possible into the second night before you get your first sleep. It makes a massive difference trying to get over Grand Nairon after it. So if you can get as close to that as possible, which is a kind of a technical section, it makes it easier the following day. And I'm only a kind of n equals 1 experiment, but yeah, it definitely felt easier because we got so far on the second day before we got a bit of sleep, which was good.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's like you're starting Tour 450, you see, at 8 o'clock in the evening, so you're always going to run through the first night. Whereas the 2 years I did Tour 330, I always took 20 minutes of a sleep in somewhere like Orus in the first night because you're starting at 10 o'clock in the day. And it's a completely different, I suppose, setup. You need to get something on the first night because you don't want to be going too sleep deprived on the second night. I know a lot of the front runners wouldn't do that, but it kind of worked for me. Whereas in Tour 450, because you're starting at night, you're going to run through the first night. Nobody sleeps, apart from me last year because I was wrecked. I slept in Defias, but anyway.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's a good point because you're starting basically an hour in around dusk. The Glaciers race starts. You had a fall in the first section as well. You're still sporting the bandage on your hand. I see. Well, tell us about that.
Yeah, I think I left Refugio Elisabetta with the two Gabiu brothers who just won PTL, so they're serious operators. So I knew I was kind of up around the kind of pointy end of the race, which was kind of concerning me because I thought this is a bit too fast, too early on. Is it all going to go pear-shaped later? But I felt good. I wasn't breathing hard. I was able to talk to them. It was grand. And myself and a guy that I ran a lot of the race with, a Pole named Jarek, we kind of passed them out and went over Col Chevan pretty handily. And the descent from Col Chevan to La Tuile is like the easiest angled farm track you will ever see in your life. It's actually one of the easiest descents on the course, I'd say. But it's 10 kilometers. And I just I don't know, I stubbed the toe on a rock or something, but I just took a 360-degree cartwheel and landed on the ground and ripped open my elbow. I ripped open my knee, got a few stitches in that later, but I broke 3 fingers and kind of got up, and yeah, it was kind of adrenaline just kind of said, yeah, I'm fine, to Yarek when he passed me, but like I could see that my fingers were pointing in the direction that they shouldn't be. And I said, this ain't good for using poles for the next 5 days, so let's see what we can do with the next refugio. So when I got to Defias, I held up my hand around to everybody concerned and kind of looked at, and then we were all looking, kind of going, yeah, that doesn't look right. But yeah, before I had any time to do anything, Yarek just pulled a bandage out of his pack and wrapped the 3 fingers together and said, off we go. And yeah, off out the door we went. So yeah, but I had to take the strapping off within 5 or 6 hours because I couldn't use my poles properly, or I couldn't do any of the chain or via ferrata sections. So yeah, I basically spent 4 days with 3 broken fingers, kind of just sucking it up more than anything else.
How did that feel? I mean, were the fingers functional?
Yeah, the middle, the kind of the ring finger on my right hand, yeah, no, not really functional. It was swollen, very, very swollen. But what can you do? You're not going to stop the race for a broken finger. At the end of the day, you keep going. If it was broken leg now, I might say something.
Yeah, I suppose the hand maybe started off being painful at the start, but then the rest of the other bits of the body caught up and passed it.
Exactly. And when the more sleep deprived you get, nothing in your body kind of is any problem. It's all in your mind at that stage,
So take us in from Defias, where you got the fingers taped, and let's continue to go through this section to Konya and any highlights or low points that are worth mentioning.
Yeah, I stayed in Defias for about a minute or two after the guys left, because I was talking to last year's second place finisher Volker Vormeister, and he was having stomach problems, but he was kind of saying to me that he was kind of telling me about a few of the sections to watch out for on the next section, and I then left before anybody else came in the door, and within 15 minutes of leaving Defias, I had vomited everything I'd eaten for the last 7 hours. Couldn't figure it out. I felt fine. Less than 10 minutes later, I could eat again, no problem. So I kind of assumed there was some simple solution to this. So I kind of checked. I kind of have a sensor on my arm here for diabetes, a thing called Dexcom. It just goes to your iPhone. And I looked at the iPhone and it looked fine. Readings were perfect. But I had a backup kind of blood sugar meter where you prick your finger. So I took that out, checked it, and the readings were through the roof, off into space, basically. So I kind of immediately realized, yeah, this is what's after happening. Adrenaline from the fall and just stuffing my face without taking insulin was after basically making my body reject everything I was eating. Took a bit of insulin, slowed down, and went up over called Planaval. The descent to that is, I suppose, tricky enough. It's kind of a hard neve snow slope with a cable to the left-hand side and kind of gravel. So the descent was tricky enough. I put on micro spikes for that. A lot of people didn't. They went down the left-hand side of it, off the snow. Kind of we ended up in the same place at the bottom in a mess of boulders with some unbelievable descenders passing me. Like, I thought I was good at descending until you see a 50-year-old French guy just bouncing over the boulders, and you're there kind of going, what the fuck is he doing? But yeah, because any slip and you're falling into a person-sized hole in between them, so you won't be coming out too quick. But yeah, after that, the next section to Planaval was fine. They changed the aid stations there this year, so I made sure to stock up on a few things in Planaval because it was a big 30k, 3,000 meter section between there and Refugio Bezi, and a very tricky kind of contrived balcony above the Val Grisonche area. But I liked it. I actually enjoyed that area, that particular climb. I'd managed to catch back up with Yarek, and we ended up passing the Gabiu brothers, who said they were stopping because they're basically, both of them had sore throats, and the PTL they hadn't recovered from it, which was unfortunate because, to be fair, they were still moving fairly well, but no, you could hear that they weren't in a great spot. We tried to coax them onto Bezi, but they just didn't fancy it. So yeah, all the way to the place where I DNF'd last year, a little kiosk on the roadside before the ascent to Bezi, and I had I think I had an espresso there and a croissant, and off up to Refugio Bezi, and I arrived in the door to see a French guy with his head in his hands and kind of holding his stomach. He'd gone out hard with Sebastian and was not in a happy place, and just as I came in, he left after eating nothing. Not a good idea, but it is what it is. Basically, I think that was around 1:30 on Saturday. I decided that it was time to have a beer. It was cooking, so had an omelette and beer, and headed off out the door myself. Passed him pretty quickly up to Col Bettelina Superior, which is an easy enough ascent, but the descent is horrific. Boulder hopping for a while before you get to, I think, is it Refugio Benevolo, And again, we were kind of hovering around the same locations, myself, Yarek and Volker at that stage, and another Indian guy called Shashwat Rao, who's done it a couple of years. Very, very nice guy, and just comical watching it because he carries poles on his back and he runs everything. Like it's crazy stuff. He'll run any steep descent, and he just seems to just metronomically do it. He's an unbelievable forward progress machine. But we were all kind of running together within kind of minutes of each other. But the next descent over Col Rossay was a nightmare. It was just like a wall, which I was told it was like a wall, but yeah, I didn't believe it until it actually happened. And bad weather started coming in around then as well. So very, very heavy torrential downpour. Chased us all the way to Refugio Savoia, where we kind of took stock. Myself and Yarek. Volker said he was stopping there for a bit. We don't know where Shashwat went, but he wasn't with us at that stage. And we stocked up on food and left just as kind of night was falling. So we headed off down a fairly mind-numbing, shallow-angled valley all the way to Pont, which is kind of the starting point for the Grand Paradiso. And I was happy enough because I had thought at that stage I was definitely going to have either taken 30 minutes in Benevolo or Savoia, but it was still bright-ish, so didn't feel the need to sleep, so kept going until Vittorio Emanuele, and that was where we said, look, this is the biggest refugio on the course. Yes, it's full of people wanting to climb the Grand Paradiso, but it's 11 o'clock at night. It's worth taking an hour here, so we got an hour there after eating copious amounts of food, and got up, realised that it was after getting very, very cold. Not just because we were inside in a warm refuge, but when we went out, it was very cold. And they told us that, look, there was snow coming. And there's probably going to be snow going over the likes of Grand Nairon and over Lausanne, which are pretty high passes, 3,300 meters. So you kind of knew what you were getting into. So we wandered over to Refugio Chabot before those two passes. Myself and Yarek, thought we were moving fairly well, but Volker and Shashwat were just unbelievable speed over there. Like they just left us for dust. 5-10 minutes they arrived before us and couldn't understand what was happening. I thought we were after, it was all over very quickly. We were after using all our energy in the first day and a half, and it was going to be a suffer fest from here to the finish. But yeah, it just turned out they wanted to get to Chabot out of the cold and go to sleep. So as we arrived there was the other French guy that had gone off with Sebastian just leaving, heading out into the dark. So myself and Yarek, neither of us wanted to sleep again because we'd just taken an hour. So we basically had a coffee, some chocolate, and left, and headed up for Nairon. And at that stage, the snow was kind of heavy. So we knew that once we got to the top of that, it was going to be a pretty tricky descent, because anybody that doesn't know Grand Nairon, it's basically lots of cables, ladders, and, lots of lovely drops that you can fall to your amazing death if you don't get it right. And because you couldn't see any footprints, at that stage, it was going to be tricky to find where the actual footholds were on the way down, holding steel cables and things like that. But luckily, the French guy that we'd caught up with went over first and kind of was a fairly good technical climber as well. So he kind of made it look easy, to be honest. I thought I was a good climber, but yeah, he was evidently better. But we got down and away from Nairon handy enough. It was very cold at that stage, middle of the night, kind of 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, heading for the bottom of Lausanne. Well, kind of halfway down Lausanne. It doesn't go all the way down to Aarhus, but yeah, we got down there and there was an Italian guy past us as if we were stopped flying, and I was saying maybe that's a good strategy. Start very slow and then start picking it up. A guy called Luca Brambilla, he'd done it last year and just wanted to do it a bit quicker this year. And to be fair to him, he flew up Lausanne and his zigzagging trail helped us an awful lot get to the top of that. But by about 100 or 200 meters before the top, yeah, I was feeling super cold. I was close to hypothermic. I'd basically broken the first law of mountaineering. The minute anything starts feeling bad, just stop and put some extra layers on. I didn't do it. I said it was not going to get much worse, and I persisted out until the top, and it was a stupid mistake. It probably led to the sore throat I had later in the race. But yeah, got to the top, and while Yarek was taking photos, I just looked around and went, I got to get this to Refugio Sella. I'm frozen. So yeah, headed off down there. And yeah, Sella, lovely refuge, one of the nicest on the course, I think.
What time of day did you go over Col Lausanne?
I think it was just at dawn on the Sunday. I think, yeah, on the dawn on the Sunday, so kind of 6:30, 7 o'clock. So we just
would have been
sunrise.
crossing over into sunlight.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So it would have been super cold on the ascent. And did you have snow on the ground at that point?
Oh yeah, there was 2 inches of snow on the ground at that point, and it was still snowing. And there was strong wind as well. And I couldn't believe it. The Irish lads that would have done Tour 450 as well, later in the race, like they went over the same call and there was no snow. So it went as quick as it came. And Sebastian didn't see any of it, the leader. He was over it before any of it happened. You know, it was just a kind of I suppose, a pinch point of about 24 hours that anybody that was caught in that kind of time frame got the worst of it, I suppose.
In this first section, like, how are you thinking about pacing? You know, you mentioned there about Volker heading off faster. They wanted to get to a hut. Like, are you ever thinking about those around you, or are you dialing into just your own effort level?
Yeah, I never think about anybody around you, because I've made that mistake in many, many shorter races like Trans Gran Canaria and UTMB. And don't follow anybody else. Listen to your body. Don't start breathing heavily. Just take it handy. There's a long race to go. So if the likes of Volker was flying past us, grand to let him off, you know. As I say, I just wanted to finish the race this year. I didn't care about placings or times or anything. So I was of the view, yeah, I might be in the top 10 now. I don't care if I finish in the top 100. I just want to finish. So don't ruin it in the first 2 days. Keep going at your own pace and just take care of yourself. That's pretty much what you're thinking.
So whenever you get to Refugio Vittoria Sella, if you're in Tour 330, you're pretty close to Konya. You've got a little bit more to do before you get to Konya. Where are you in the course when you're at that hut?
Yeah, you probably got another 20 odd K to go to get to Konya. So you probably get 140 K in, but you've got another 20 K in 1,000 meters of ascent and probably 2,000 meters of descent to get to Konya. But the mind-numbing part of it this year was the previous ascent from Sella on the Tour 450 actually went slightly further down the valley and up over a col, whereas this year you had to backtrack your tracks back up towards Col Lausanne and go up over another call called Col de Rous. And that was head-wrecking because you were basically meeting runners coming against you on the way down to Sella. So it was a kind of a, really, that was the first mental, I suppose, one where you had to kind of just say, yeah, forget about the people you're meeting. It's think of your own race. You got to get over the call. You'll get to your drop bag. All will be well. So, forget about the people coming towards you and that are chasing you. Just keep going. And the climb up over Col de la Rous was actually pretty tricky as well, because there was a lot of snow after falling there as well. It's still a kind of an elevated enough col, and the descent off it was a bit slippy because the snow was after lying. So yeah, it was after lying and kind of freezing, so it was kind of hard. We came close to putting on spikes, but we didn't. But then when you got further down the valley, it was glorious sunshine all the way to Konya, and by the time you got to Konya, we were cooking. It was so hot. So into Konya, and I said to Yarek at the time, we were still running together, I'm taking 50 minutes here, just sorting out everything, getting a shower, getting massage, getting feet taped, eating like a king, and we'll head off out the door. And within 30, he'd a crew, so he was obviously going to be a lot more efficient than I was. So within 30 minutes, he said, I'm leaving. And I said, sure, grand, off you go. I might see you again, I might not. But it was good for the first day and a half, because it kind of pulled us along miles that probably would have taken a lot longer. It was good to just have somebody else with you. Which I completely repacked my bag in Konya for the shorter section, because it's only about 60K with 5,000 meters to Donnas. No, it's not a trivial section, but it makes the first section, seem a bit bigger. So I emptied my bag of everything pretty much that you didn't need, or that the organization didn't want you to take. So micro spikes were taken out, pretty much everything else food-wise was taken out. And I left with pretty much, I think, about 1.5 liters of water, kind of electrolytes, that was it. And within 30 minutes, I'd caught back up with Yarek because it was super hot. And yeah, he was cooking. But yeah, we kind of kept going together then for a while, up over kind of Refugio Grosson, Champorchet and all that kind of area. And you kind of joined the Tour 330 course again then around kind of Refugio Miseran. And we had a big feed there. And I kind of knew in my head at that stage that I'd been told by Volker and a few others that the following climb from Chardonnay, called Col Fricola, is one of the most ball-breaking ones on the course. It's a nightmare to navigate on the way up, and the descent is just horrendous, kind of boulder hopping, interspersed with slippy grass, very steep. So he said, get to the start of that before nightfall if you can, because if you don't, you'll even find it hard to find the start. And he was right. We just got there at dusk and found the start of that climb. And within 15 minutes, we also found the guy that was in second place, sitting on a rock, looking at the ground with his head torch on. Luca, the Italian that had passed us. And he was not in a good way, because he'd pushed the envelope with sleep, I'd say, or lack thereof. So we kind of joined forces and pretty much stumbled up that climb, to be honest. We were all sleep deprived, and got to the top. And down the other side, Lucas stopped halfway down because we were moving too quick, and just said, I'm stopping here for a while, go ahead. And that was pretty much, I think, the last we saw him. No, we did see him asleep in Dortoir Retempio, but yeah, he kind of dropped soon afterwards, I think. But yeah, that descent really took it out of both of us. I didn't think we were going to actually sleep in Retempio, but we were fried. We had to. I said I was taking an hour and a half, and to be honest, Yarek agreed. An hour and a half, gotta have it. So we ate a lot there, went to sleep, and when we woke up, there was only 3 people in the bunks around us, which was surprising. I thought we'd be caught up by a lot more seasoned campaigners, the likes of Luca Papis and these guys that just seem to keep going for days without sleep and, just impervious to kind of anything. But yeah, we left there fairly quickly and headed over towards Refugio Bonze, which is another mind-cracking section of taking you in the wrong direction, signs pointing, saying it's only 30 minutes away. An hour and a half later, you're still not there, and you're kind of going, what the fuck is happening here? This is not fun anymore. But you get there eventually. And at every refuge, yeah, go on.
Let's talk a little bit about like the navigational challenges of the 450, because it's not flagged. You have to follow a GPX file on your watch, and I hear that that's pretty difficult for quite a lot. I mean, quite a lot of sections on the watch. It's not particularly detailed. It's very easy to go off track if you're just using the GPX on the watch. What are you using, and what's your strategies for keeping on track?
Yeah, I actually had heard that, and to be honest, I was prepared for it. But to be honest, I didn't have too much trouble with navigation. I think there was only 2 sections. Finding the route up Fricala was extremely difficult because there's really no paths once you get above a couple of 100 meters, so it's very hard to find any sort of trail. And the second place was probably the descent to Montiel later in the race, which is just a massive glacial till with cairns everywhere, so you don't know where you're going, and the GPX is pointing in one direction, which is the complete wrong way because it's sending you over a cliff. So no, I use a Garmin Enduro 2. I had a Phoenix 6 with me as well, but I never took it out of the drop bag. But the Enduro 2 worked fine, and as a backup, I had on the phone I had Gaia GPS with the
yeah. So good.
Those two really, and I never really looked at the iPhone, and Gaia didn't come out at all. So the Enduro 2 kind of did the whole thing. The one thing
really, so you never had to pull out Gaia at all? That's amazing.
No, never pulled out Gaia. The one thing I was concerned about with the Enduro 2 was battery life, and in Thor 330 both years with the Phoenix, the battery died. As in, I had 50% battery showing on the watch, and then the blue triangle of death just came up. So I was extremely mindful of that. So anytime it went to about 60%, I got the power bank out and started charging it back up to 90 because I didn't want to be halfway up a climb that wasn't exactly well marked during the night and haven't a clue where I was. So yeah, that was probably the key thing. Just keep your watch charged.
Yeah, it's so critical for the navigation alone. It nothing to do with saving the activity. That's a very low secondary concern.
Absolutely.
So in the second section, the 60Ks, 5,000 meters, what were the highs and low points in this section for you?
Yeah, the low point was I kind of started to climb up Fricala and started pulling the 2 guys up behind me, and I was feeling very, very good. But they were asking me to slow down a small bit because I was going too fast, which was hilarious, to be honest. I didn't think I was going that fast. I thought we were all kind of stumbling around at the same pace, but less than 30 minutes later, I was hallucinating. So without the 2 of them, I probably wouldn't have made the top in that time. So that was a pretty low point, in fairness. Probably another low point was just not getting to Bonds as quick because it just takes you all over the place before you get there. And the high point, I'd say, was the descent into Donas. It was, again, we had gone through another night. It was just coming into the morning time. The sun was up. The guys at the Refugio and Bonze had basically said the descent is about 2.5 hours, and we did it in 1:55, and it didn't feel hard. So we kind of came into Donas, actually hard to believe, but kind of fresh enough, and realised that we're not staying here that long. I mean, anybody that knows Thor has done it. Donas is a nightmare, especially in Thor 330. Get out of there as quickly as possible. Don't stay there. It's nothing to do with the volunteers. It's nothing to do with anything. It's just that it's so low, it's so hot, and there's just too many people, especially if you're in the Thor 330. It just you can't get sleep. But it's the kind of key point in the race where you need sleep in Thor 330. In Thor 450, it's different. You probably don't. You've already got sleep in Refugios. So the plan there was to just get in and out quick. And we did. We were in and out in, I'd say, 40 minutes. And we started off the climb to Perlaws and Refugio Coda. And that's, as everybody knows in Thor, it's a complete and utter nightmare. Like, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're Franco Collet or fucking me or somebody else, it's going to take 5 hours. But no matter what you do, it's just 2,000 meters straight up. So yeah, not fun. Yeah, and the heat of the day wasn't great either. And at that stage, I left Yarrick. He was struggling with the heat again, and like we didn't say anything. I just kind of moved away and had a pretty strong climb up Dakota. And again, or 450 changes the route there slightly from Thor 330. It goes over a couple of ridges with kind of cables and things. Takes a bit more time, but you eventually get Dakota back onto the Thor 330 route. So you're pretty much following Thor 330 on the section from Donos to Gressinay pretty much all the way. So you have yellow flags. So you can take your brain out of its box and put it to sleep for a couple of hours. So you don't have to navigate. It's fine. Just keep following yellow flags.
So how many hours of sleep have you banked at this point, given that you are approaching, let's say, 200 kilometers?
Yep. Yeah, I'd got an hour in Vittorio Emanuele, an hour and a half in Retempio, and probably 15 minutes at each massage. So like probably, 3 hours maybe. So yeah, I didn't feel tired at that stage. I felt lucid enough, or at least I thought I felt lucid enough. Maybe the live stream of an interview I did with Silvano Gadan at Coda would say otherwise, that I might have been completely out of it. But yeah, I haven't seen that one yet. So that's
none of it is available to see on any of the live stream stuff. Is no longer available, so you're safe. No one,
thankfully.
So in this section, it doesn't seem like there's your normal highs, your lows. You're doing regular resets, like repacking your bag. You're eating plenty. Are you managing or thinking about like the diabetes? Like, are you monitoring the numbers on that?
Yeah, no, you have to monitor that all the time. You have to keep it within a certain boundary level. Otherwise, as I say, what happened back before, just after Defies is going to happen again. You're going to not be able to keep calories down. It's just going to all come up, or you'll end up slowing down because your muscles will begin to kind of get ketoacidosis, which is a kind of a condition where if you've blood sugar too high for too long, it just impacts your whole kind of physical system.
And how are you monitoring it? Because you said earlier that the iPhone thing wasn't working.
Yeah, I put another one on in Konya. I had a spare one in Konya, so I put another one on in Konya, and that worked. So that kept going for, like, they last for about 10 days, so that kept going for the rest of the race. Now, in a race like this, I typically let it trend, like my blood glucose level trend a bit high, because the last thing you want to do is let it go the opposite direction, too low, especially if you're not carrying too much food. It's probably not great. So yeah, just keep monitoring it. Your phone will alert. You can set alerts on your phone, and it'll alert you when you go below a certain level, and you just nibble a bit of something and you'll be fine.
Like whenever you talk about this, it makes me think about that kind of it'll be fine attitude. Sure, we'll sort it out if something happens. Let's not overthink it. Let's just do what we need to do. Let's keep moving forward. Let's problem solve if a problem appears, but let's not waste time doing anything else. Let's just continue on the mission.
Yeah, if I could relate it to something, a film that probably most people know, The Martian. When at the end, Marcus Watney's kind of saying about what's it like going to space, and it's basically a case of keep solving problems and you might get to come home. It's basically the same thing. These races are just basically problem-solving exercises, and basically making sure that you recognize the problem as quickly as possible, so that the earlier you catch it, the easier it is to fix it. Whereas if you ignore it, the worse it gets. Then another problem occurs, then another one, then another one, and then you're DNFing.
And the banking sleep at various points, you're getting ahead so that you're not having to deal with a sleep deprivation problem and then, collapse on the trail for 15 minutes. What about like the massages? Are you having to have these, or are you just trying to keep the body kind of loose enough or deal with things before they're major problems or bigger problems?
To be honest, you don't need them, but I use them both for a mental strategy. It actually, after 15 minutes of a massage, you feel like Superman. It actually does nothing for you really, but your mind thinks it does. But you also have 15 minutes sleep, so you get a double whammy. So that's pretty much the reason why I keep using them. I don't need them, but yeah, they're handy.
Do you have like a checklist or a mental checklist even when you're going into a hut or a life base? Gotta eat, then massage, I'll get a sleep, I'll tape my feet. Do you have like a go-to list?
Yeah, the list is simple. First thing I do when I get to a life base is shower, change clothes, then massage, feet taped, then eat stuff, and fill up with whatever I need to do in my bag. If I'm thinking about going for 30 minutes of sleep, I'll then go for 30 minutes sleep. If I'm not, I'll leave. In a refugio, it's purely give me the food, fill my bottles, gone. No time wasted. Because you, as I say, you can waste minutes to turn into 20 minutes to turn into a half an hour in a refugio very quickly. And if you do that every refugio, you lose hours.
I saw some people getting their feet taped before tour, and I was blown away by the percentage of foot that was covered in tape. It was like from ankle bone down, everything was just completely covered. And I actually seen this one person that I saw in that had this 99% tape coverage. I saw him after the race, and he had still had his feet completely taped. And obviously it had been reapplied probably several times, but I was just surprised by how much tape coverage there was. Coming from someone that I've never taped my feet for anything, I've always been like, well, I'd never really get any blisters. And when I do get blisters, I kind of never notice them until after a race. I'm going, that's sore in a shower. So
Yeah.
talk a bit about your taping of the feet. Are you preventing something? Do you know that something happened in the past that's making you think, I'm going to tape these so this doesn't happen?
Yeah, no, I mean, the taping is purely just a blister that might have occurred during the race. I don't tape my feet before the race at all. Like, my feet are fairly, I suppose, robust enough from years at this stuff now that you rarely get blisters. But when you do get them, again, it's like every problem in tour, solve it quickly, as quickly as possible, because it's not going to go away and it's going to get worse. One small blister can turn into a very big blister very quickly because you're not stopping. You're going to be moving for another 2 or 3 days. So that's why a lot of people tape their feet. So that's when I get to life bases, I'll always go to the podiatrist, and they'll have a look to see if there's anything after starting or if there's something getting a bit red, and they'll tape that section. I don't go for the full foot binding mechanism that you might have seen.
Mummified feet.
Yeah. It's purely on a basis of whatever is there that might be a problem. They'll deal with it, and it does prevent it probably getting worse. So that's the only reason why I'd get feet taped, to be honest.
Back into the race, we're heading towards Gressony. Take it from there, and let's talk us through the next section.
Yeah, so from Coda all the way to the Gressoney, basically, you're following up in the main, the Tour 330 route, so the yellow flags. So when I got to Coda, I was kind of meeting the top 10 of the Tour 330, so the John Kellys of this world, and I was kind of following them over along to Lago Chiaro and onto Niel, which is a place that never seems to come. As everybody knows on tour, it just takes forever. You can see it, but you never get there. You eventually get there, though, in fairness. But I got there late that night, kind of early into the next morning. And there was a very strong foehn wind after picking up at that stage, so it was very cold. And I knew I had to go up over Col Lausanne, which is still like 2,700 metres or so. And you were going to be up there, because it takes a slightly different course to Tour 330 there. You're going to be up there for an hour or two. And I made a really schoolboy stupid error while going up that and while going across the top, because I was beginning to feel sleep deprivation coming on again. I never put a buffer around my neck or a buffer around my mouth to stop the cold air going into my lungs, and it cost me big time later. So like by the time I got to the other side of that call, heading for Gressoney, I stopped in a place called Oberloo. It's kind of a farmer's kind of, I suppose, refuge more than anything else. And I had begun.
I know that one. It's a nice little spot as well.
It is, yeah, it's lovely, and like Gressoney is only an hour away from there, but
Yeah.
I could feel that my throat really sore and beginning to impact my breathing as well, but thought nothing of it really. Had some hot coffee and some cakes and a bit of milk, and left thinking that this is an hour down to Gressoney. It took me 2.5 hours. I was just stumbling around like a fucking madman. I was hallucinating. So yeah, it was my first pushing the boat out of sleep deprivation a bit too much. At that stage, I got to Gressoney, realised that I was still motoring well because I was passing kind of guys that were in the top 10 in Tour 330, so that shouldn't be happening. Like, I'm out there for 2 days longer than them. So either they were suffering big time or I was still pretty much okay, even though I thought I was in a bad way. I thought about keeping going in Gressoney, but it's a life base that you have to use because you've 50 hours left, to be honest, if the truth be told, from there to the end. And it's the last place where you can change your bag, I suppose, fill it up to what you need for that 50 hours, and also get a good rest and foot taken care of, and food. So I went in there thinking, I'm in second place, can't stop here, got to keep going. But after 10 minutes, I realised I'm fried, gotta go to sleep. So I did my usual shower, massage, taping, food, went to sleep for 2 hours. When I woke up, Yarek was just after coming in. And we had a chat, and he was kind of saying, yeah, it was fried, the Coda, you were right to go away. So he'd no issue with me leaving. And like the likes of the John Kelly and Lawrence Eccles of this world, who were still kind of in the top 10 of the 330, were just after waking as well, and they were heading out the door. But unfortunately, they were heading out the door up to Refugio Alpenzoo, which is the third 330 course. I wasn't. I was heading way further up the valley to another place called Restoro Sitten. But it was morning at that stage, and it was kind of bright and sunny, so it kind of wakes you up in itself. You kind of trick your body into going.
So you in Gressony, that's the last time you see your bag until the finish. Okay, you are having to plan ahead what I need for the next 50 hours. And are you getting information from the life base about what to expect weather-wise? Was there any changes coming?
Yeah, no, I'd asked that when I'd come in that night, was like, is the phone wind going to keep going? And they basically said, yeah, it's here for the next 2.5 days. So yeah, definitely bring warmer clothes and a bigger jacket, because at Donnas, I changed out of my fairly, I suppose, mountaineering type jacket into a very lightweight taped seams type of thing that you'd use in a fell race or a mountain race in Ireland, because it seemed to it was going to be fine. We weren't going up that high. So yeah, I changed back into, I suppose, warmer clothing in the bag. I mean, I never wear warmer clothing on me, so I was still in a shorts and a t-shirt, but I put in a kind of a thermal top and a kind of, I suppose, a more robust jacket and long waterproof pants and a few other bits and pieces like gloves, just to make sure that I wasn't going to get caught out, which I did anyway, but that's beside the point. We'll hear about that. But yeah, I kind of packed the bag. It was kind of going to be a kilogram heavier probably, but you don't notice it at that stage because you're sleep deprived, you're fried. So like weights and bags don't matter. So yeah, left it there with a bit more stuff stocked in for the next 50 hours or so, which I thought I was going to take, and wandered away off out into the grim ether for another day or two.
And over the next day or so, half a day, did you buddy up with any other runners? Did you see the Jarek or anyone?
Yeah, he said to me that he wasn't sleeping in Gressoney and he was going to follow me out the door, but I suppose I went up over Restoro Sitten and a few other calls and was getting towards, like, I suppose, called the Tima Bench, which is just over Cervinia, and it's a pretty much a big assault in the senses, because when you hit that, it's you're basically looking down onto Cervinia and looking up at the Matterhorn and the whole kind of bowl of ski resort of Cervinia. So it's kind of a big mechanized human kind of thing where you've ski lifts all over the place, peace bashers, all this kind of stuff, and the wind was savage. It was the first time I put on my jacket properly on the way down to Hotel Stambeco. And again, at that stage, I'd been going for a long period. It's a long section from Gressoney to there, and I knew that I needed another bit of sleep. I was beginning to slow down a lot. You kind of notice it, that when you start getting tired, start eating. It kind of keeps you going for a bit longer than what it should. And then when the eating doesn't solve the problem of staying awake anymore, you start kind of tricking your mind into, yeah, it's only morning time or whatever. But eventually that wears out too. And by the time I was getting to Stambeco, it was getting to dusk. So I knew I kind of had to get another bit of sleep in there. So I did. I ate a load and got an hour's sleep, which was handy.
And so whenever you're spending these longer stretches on your own, this is a very open question, but like, what's on your mind? What are the games that you're playing with yourself? And I'll reference chatting to Martin Perrier and his strategy on kind of beating the sleep demons was cycling through a list of things to do. So there's caffeine, there's music, there's like talking to himself out loud, and there was several things that he would cycle through, and if none of these worked, then I need to get a nap. So talk a little bit about that for yourself.
Yeah, so like from Gressoney all the way to Stambeco, I was on my own. I couldn't see anybody, and there was only one refuge in between, Guy de Frachet. So yeah, I mean, what I do pretty much is, like, you just keep telling yourself, you signed up for this. You got to want to be there. This is it. This is what you wanted. Suck it up. It's time to wear the big boy's pants, be not out about it, and keep going. I don't use music at all. I never have. And as I say, caffeine will only do so much for you. So you just take it all in your stride. You look around, enjoy the scenery, and just keep moving forward. And as I say, keep solving the problems as they occur. When you start feeling sleepy, start eating a bit. If that doesn't work, just start. I suppose one strategy I normally have for getting, I suppose, through a section like that is start going faster. Sounds counterintuitive because you can't see how the hell are you going to go faster. You're fucking flat. But yeah,
That's what I was going to ask you, because
increase the pace.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that because, you know, if you're struggling on just say on a normal training run or something, you can either go slower or you can go faster, but you need to change something.
Yeah.
So the same thing can apply 300 kilometers in.
Yep. No, as I say, to climb up the Coliseum Banch before Cervinia, yeah, I was in it's a very long valley on the way into it, but then the climb is a bit of a wall. And I just basically resolved at that stage, because the food wasn't working anymore. I was still kind of getting a bit sleepy. I just resolved the only way this gets better is smash this climb, because at least you get to stand back up quicker. So that's basically what I did. And got to the top and got hit by the phone wind, and yeah, it kind of brought me back down to earth again. But yeah, it was definitely worth. It's definitely worth doing if you're ever kind of caught out with sleep. Yeah, go faster.
Yeah. So the science of that is obviously that a faster heart rate makes it harder to sleep.
I don't know if there's any science to it, but it works for me.
That's my pseudoscience. So continue on with this section and take us through this.
So I was in Stambeco for an hour, had a good sleep there, and when I woke up, the kitchen staff brought out this unbelievable chocolate mousse with kind of honeycomb in it. Be honest, diabetic shouldn't be eating this stuff. They shouldn't be allowed near it, but I just guzzled it because it was so nice. One of the volunteers had a couple of bottles of the microbrasserie, the Mont Blanc beer, so had a bottle of that as well for good measure, and left in the dark. So I'd arrived there at dusk, kind of at light, and I knew that the night was going to be grim because there was going to be a strong cold wind, and I was leaving in the dark. So I knew that the next night coming up was going to be a make or break night, but also it was going to be a mentally challenging one, to be honest. And I left in good form. I wasn't. There was nothing wrong with me physically. Felt perfect. And the next couple of hours were fine. You kind of keep skirting around the bowl of Cervinia, and then head down on a descent towards Refugio Barmas, which is a refugio for the Tour 330, but we're not allowed into it. And by the time I got to there, I couldn't breathe. I'd gone from running downhill to barely being able to walk forward. The sore throat that I'd had gotten way worse, and it was constricting my airway. So I felt like, if you listen to me breathing at that stage, it was like the worst asthmatic you've ever fucking seen, even though I'm not an asthmatic. So it was a big time concerning one. And I didn't really know how to solve the problem. I had nothing in my bag that could solve the problem. There was a couple of signposts pointing down towards Val Tournanche that looked very enticing. DNF, end it all. You can end it at any minute. There's no problem. It's your own mind that has to deal with it. So I just sat down on a rock and put on every bit of clothing I had, and just sat there for about 30 minutes. I wasn't asleep. I wasn't awake. I was kind of, I'd say I was probably in a bit of a funk, but also a kind of a general mild hallucination, because I didn't know what I was waiting for. I knew I was kind of 2.5, 3 hours ahead of third place. And when I woke up, due to cold, I just said, look, yeah, I might have made a balls of this. I might have to drop at the next refugio, but look, get to the next refugio anyway. The only problem was the next refugio was Villermoz, which is 1,500 meters up. So yeah, that took a while. It was an unconscionable ball cracker of a climb, to be honest. The only thing that kind of pulled me out of my kind of sleepy state and kind of heavy breathing state was a couple of chamois that came flying past me out of nowhere. It nearly took me out. But got to Villermoz and just went in the door and had resigned myself to dropping, to be honest. I just took the bag off and just told the Guardian, coffee, tea, whatever you have, anything hot. And he kind of listened to my breathing and was kind of saying, are you an asthmatic, or is it just the cold air? And I was kind of going, no, it just happened in the last 3 or 4 hours. And he just pulled out a load of herbal tea with some honey and said, drink that and go to sleep for an hour. So I said, I'll drink that and go to sleep for 2 hours, because I was fried, and went upstairs and happily went away into dreamland for 2 hours, which felt like about 2 seconds, because when he came to wake me up, I didn't actually know where I was or what I was doing. But came downstairs, and happily enough, the breathing had kind of improved a bit, not massively, but it kind of improved enough to know that I could keep going. And I kind of resolved that, look, I was still only, 60 or 70 hours into the race. There was another 120 hours to finish if I needed it. Like, I knew I could crawl it in 50. So, it'd be stupid to stop. And who cares if I go from second to 100? Just finish it. That's what you came out here to do this year, finish as after last year. So yeah, that's pretty much what happened. He told me that Yarek had passed through about 30 minutes previous to me getting up. So that was the goal: get out the door and kind of, for want of nothing better to do, try and catch up with him. It wasn't to try and catch him for second place. It was just to try and meet some other lost soul so we could kind of fucking trade war stories of what happened over the last day or two. So they just got up to call Valcornier just above that, and the wind was still savage. And the descent was very technical with chains and ropes and cables again. But I kind of had gone a bit crazy at that stage, I'd say, because I just ran that descent. Like, if I look back on it now, there's no way I should have ran half it. Like, I was passing out chains, like I was just cutting switchbacks where there was chains, so like jumping 5, 6, 7 foot over, expecting that the trail was going to be there, and sure, it mightn't have been there at all. I'd never done the descent before, so it was a bit out there. A couple of things brought me back around, right, when I did it at one stage and landed down on the trail after the switchback and looked down, and there was a 40-meter drop with chains and ropes. So yeah, that kind of woke me up a small bit. So that's another strategy to wake you up, if anybody's listening.
Shock.
Shock, yeah.
And how was the throat at this point? Like, do you know what had caused this? Over the past couple of years, whenever I've been paying attention to tour, there is this respiratory thing that takes hold in quite a lot of people, and it's the cause of a lot of DNFs. Some people end up getting pneumonia as a result of it.
Yeah, so like even the races I do, I suppose, like the back-to-backs of crossing Switzerland and Grosslochner and Swiss Peaks and Tor and things like that, like your legs after 3 or 4 days, they're just going to keep going. Like, you lose a bit of force in them, but you'll still be fine. But your lungs won't recover unless you give them rest. So like, every day that you push the boat out a bit more, your lung capacity just drops another 10% and another 10% and another 10%. So like, by the end of a Tor 450, you could be functioning on 20-25% lung capacity. So you need to give it rest, and the rest obviously is sleep. But because you're pushing the boat out on the sleep side of the house as well, the only thing that you can do to protect yourself is make sure that cold air doesn't get in. So get cold air is the thing that really starts accelerating the process of getting your lungs inflamed and getting things going downhill very quickly. So that's the number one, I suppose, piece of advice I give. If it's cold air like the phone wind, put a buffer around your mouth. Start breathing hot air in. It'll save you a ton of hurt later in the race.
I know Sebastian Reichon, the race leader, he was struggling with something similar as well. And whenever he was coming through Nail, he had the buff over his mouth, and I think he also left that aid station, let's call it, with the buff over his mouth as well. I think he struggled with that for quite a part of the race.
Yeah, I know. He started off struggling with his stomach. He couldn't eat. He couldn't take any calories in for, I'd say, the first 2 days. But yeah, the second part of it, the phone wind, really impacted a lot of us. The cold wind, and the key is put on a balaclava or a buff or something. Basically, put some sort of membrane in between the cold air and your lungs. It'll definitely help. It won't stop it all happening, but it'll definitely reduce the impact of it without a shadow of a doubt.
So you're chasing off after Jarek. Take us from there.
Yeah, after that cable section, I looked down and I could see the headlight about 30 minutes below, probably. So the goal was to try and catch him before the next aid station. And I got to him, I'd say, just as we reached Refugio Prairie, which isn't an aid station now, it was last year, but there's then a kind of a 5-kilometer flat section along a reservoir before the actual aid station, and we kind of met up there and I suppose ran to that aid station, and I could see that he was definitely more sleep deprived than I was, because obviously I'd got 2 hours in Villermoz, and when we got to that aid station, his crew was there again, because there's certain sections you can still have crew, and to be fair, his crew were brilliant to me as well, because the aid station was just being kind of set up at that stage, so they offered me whatever they had, to be fair, before the hot food. But Jarek said he was taking 15 minutes of a nap there, so I didn't feel like I needed it, and I knew I was moving slower than him anyway, because of my breathing. So I just said to his partner, look, I'm leaving, but he'll catch me because I ain't going anywhere fast. And she kind of nodded in agreement and kind of, I'd say, didn't really realise what I was saying. Probably wasn't saying it properly, to be honest, but I left for Kretzesh, and before I got there, I could see him catching me. I'd say he was within 15 minutes of me when I entered Kretzesh Refugio. But he never actually arrived. And I found out later he just walked past it because he was so sleep deprived. Didn't think it was a refugio at all.
Right.
So I went in there, and it's madness not using that refugio, because the next section is one of the hardest sections in the course, the ascent of Monchel and the descent over the other side on that kind of glacial outflow, which is a nightmare to navigate. So I went into Gretsesh, and again the Guardian there was, and the other volunteers were unbelievable. They immediately knew what was wrong with me. I was still breathing heavy, and they just basically knew that it was the cold wind had caused all this, and they gave me 3 or 4 cups of tea with honey, but also another game changer. I'd never actually used it before, but Jesus, it definitely works. They basically filled both my water bottles with mint cordial, and I mean a lot of mint, and mint big time works for that kind of stuff as well. It was a complete assault in the sense that when I first took a drink out of it halfway up the climb, I was going, this stuff was brilliant. Why haven't I been using this for 20 years? You know, it was very unbelievable. And like by the time I got to the top of Monchel, the actual throat started opening up a bit because of the mint. So there's obviously something that is going on there. I haven't even looked into reading about it, but it definitely seems to do something.
And it was just regular mint cordial?
Yep, but lots of it. So like I'd say the mint cordial versus water ratio, I'd say it was heavily stacked in the mint cordial side. I'd say, something tells me.
So you're getting plenty of sugar in there too.
I know, that wasn't brilliant. There was a lot of alarms going off on my iPhone at that stage from the old diabetic sensor. But yeah, I was so sleep deprived at that stage, it didn't really matter. It was a case of get home. So yeah, the descent from Monchel was a nightmare. It took forever. Navigation was a disaster, and I went over it in the daylight. I know the Irish lads like the Ian Keaton, Kieran Croke and Brian Hutchinson and John Williams, they went over it in the dark, and they said they were meeting people coming back against them and stuff like that. So it was just not fun, I'd say, in the dark. But yeah, I got to a bivouaco that's down at the bottom of that, and there was a 60-year-old guy that had just come up on a mountain bike. He was staying there for the night, and he just opened, and I just opened the door and collapsed into the bed and took 15 minutes of a nap, woke up, looked around, and he was there kind of looking at me, kind of going, what the fuck is this for that? And they just said, let's see, and left. And at that stage, I still thought I was in second because I didn't know where Yarrick was. So I headed off towards Refugio Champion, where you join the Tour 330 course again. Kind of joining those runners kind of brings you back into more focus that you're kind of in a race again. And there's actually other human beings on this planet called Tour 450. So, you get to Champion, and normally in Tour 330, you're kind of in an empty room at that refugio, and they don't let those runners in apart from sleeping, whereas the savages from the Tour 450 were allowed into the refuge to eat proper meals and all that kind of stuff. And they scanned my barcode on my arm on the tag, and they said, yeah, you're third Tour 450. And I just kind of looked at you, man, incredulous, going, what? No one passed me. There's no one has passed me, and Yarrick is behind me. And I said, who's ahead? Oh, it's some Polish guy in there. And I went, fuck it, how did he pass? But it turned out he didn't stop, and Session was the guy I saw passing at the window. And when I opened the door, he was a shadow of a human being in the corner, and just looked up and said, I waited for 35 minutes. I couldn't wait any longer. I'm going to sleep. And I tried to coax him out the door with me, but he was fried. He wasn't making any sense. So I think he went. He said he was going on for 3 hours, and that was pretty much the last I saw of him until after the finish, to be honest. But yeah, great guy to run with.
And what distance and time are we at Champion?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'd say Champion is still probably, it was getting close to darkness. Yeah, and I finished the next morning. So yeah, you're probably talking about 12, 13, 14 hours maybe before the finish. So you're probably just over 110 hours in, that kind of way. Distance-wise, you're probably, I'd say, 60 kilometers from the finish, maybe, that kind of way, with another 3,000 or 4,000 meters.
60k and 3,000 or 4,000 meters, sure, it sounds like nothing. You must be starting to smell the barn at this point.
Yeah, I'd say I had actually planned to sleep in Champion, get another 30 minutes, because I was kind of tired enough getting over there. But when he went down for 3 hours, and they told me that there was an Italian guy about 1 hour and 45 minutes behind me, I knew that I couldn't give him hope. So I had to get out of there, even though I didn't want to. So I basically deferred my sleep to Hotel Italia. And the next two Tour 330 people that were leaving, I tried to hang on to the back of them going up to Col Champion, and actually passed them out as it happened. They were moving fast enough. And on the descent, my breathing seemed to be better, and I was passing Tour 330 runners all the way down to the bottom of that descent, and felt pretty good. Even though night was coming in, the ascent from there up to called the Grand Saint Bernard and the Hotel Italia. The first part of it's fine. It's a fairly easy angle slope, and I wouldn't have known it, but it's easy. But I got lost in some sort of a tunnel that is halfway up there. The trail kind of heads to the right, but the main forest road keeps going and just goes into a jumble of tunnels that are all dead ends. So I kind of wandered around there for 20 minutes wondering what the fuck was going on. But I eventually got out of it, figured out what was happening, and headed off back up to Col Grand Saint Bernard and started heading for Switzerland, because at the Verbier Axe Alpine, which I did earlier in the year, there was an aid station at the hotel there, which I assumed was the same aid station. It wasn't. Hotel Italia is a different hotel.
You were thinking too
there
far ahead.
Yeah, there was a volunteer came out of nowhere across the road and kind of said, "Where are you going?" And I just went, "There, aid station." And they went, "No, aid station's here." So yeah, I kind of gave an idea of as to how tired and my mindset at that stage. Went in there and asked them where everybody was. Like, was anybody chasing me? How far were they? How close were they? Because I was now at that stage thinking about second and thinking about this could actually be a good result here. Don't fuck it up now. But they said, "No, we've no reception, so we can't tell you anything." And I just went, "Okay, give me the pizza you were offering." And I had a pizza and a beer and chocolate cake. Again, blood sugar readings went through the fucking roof. But yeah, it was what it was. Took a bit of insulin and didn't give myself a chance to think about sleep. I just left because about a month previous on a training outing in Courmayeur, I'd gone from there to the finish in kind of a handy time. So I kind of doubled that time and said, "Surely, a bit of Jesus, I'm not that bad. I'll get there in kind of 8 or 9 hours," and left. And in hindsight, I thought, yeah, this is great. But at the time, it turned out to be a nightmare because I'd done that whole section. I knew it. And I said, this is going to be simple. Knowing it meant absolutely nothing. Nothing made sense. Nothing looked like I'd done it. We're going up over Col Saint Remy. I just looked back, saw lights coming up from Hotel Italia, and I went, "I'm fucked. They're catching me. It's all over." Went into a big time negative spiral between there and the next call, but somehow still kept moving. And the descent to Forsati, I knew I could see the lights from the Tor 330 competitors coming up to that because the course joins together with the Tor 330 there again. And I knew once I got to Forsati, you're kind of on the home stretch. And if I looked behind me and couldn't see lights coming over the last call, I'd probably just about keep it together if I didn't go into proper hallucination mode. I went into Forsati and it was like an episode of MASH. There was bodies all over the place from Tor 330, and I just went, "No, if I stay here, I'm going to be one of them. I'm going to turn into a sorrowful mystery. Get out quick. Don't join the pity party.
Energy.
Don't join the pity parties." I had a quick coffee and left for Malatra, which most people that kind of follow Tor will know it's a kind of a stiff enough climb, but it is the last big kind of call. So went up and over that following two Tor 330 guys, and once I got to the top of that, I ran the full descent again, passing people. It was surreal actually, to be honest, because how I could be passing Tor 330 people after what I was after doing was beyond me, to be honest, but it just seemed to happen. And then the course deviates away again from the 330 route to go over a few calls and head to the last high point, head to the tranche. And I felt fine going over to that. Bit tired, but I got to the top of the Tetra Tranche and for some reason just had a mental breakdown. Just sat down on a rock and just started crying for about 5 minutes. No idea why I did it. Just happened. Wasn't anything to do with the result. It was just, I'd say, just utter mental fatigue. And then kind of stood up, looked around. It was a grand clear night, no wind, and left Tetra Tranche. But after about 5 minutes, stopped again. And no idea why this got into my head. But I had a spare t-shirt, a spare pair of shorts in my bag. Took them out and changed. And I'm there to this day. I don't know what the hell I was doing. No idea what I was at. Headed down to Refugio Bertone. There was a few Tor 330 people just coming in being scanned, and I got my number scanned, and they saw I was second Tor 450, and they were kind of coming out offering me all sorts of riches, and I just said, "Get this over and done with. I know this descent. I've done it in 30 odd minutes. It's easy." Although I'm Tor 330 2 years ago, it wasn't easy. It took me an hour and 45 minutes. Ended up with Javier Galvez, another Spanish guy that did Tor 450 this year, walking back up the hill talking to trees. That definitely pushed the sleep deprivation boat out a bit. But halfway down the descent this year, that started happening. Rocks started. Every rock I looked at had two eyes. Every rock was a face. Every tree was a woman with a shawl minding children. And I was there kind of going, getting very close to big time hallucination here. It could all fall apart and you could lose hours wandering around like a lunatic. So I kind of recognized the symptoms and took basically the last hope. I basically had one packet of dextrose tablets left, which I keep for kind of, if your blood sugar gets low. I took one of those and it did just about enough to wake me up to get to the finish. So I kind of arrived into Via Roma and GOREWEAR around, I think it was about 7 on I don't know what morning it was, Thursday morning, I think, which was good because I like basically arriving in when there's nobody. I don't like the hype or any of that kind of crack. So I was in before anybody was up, shopping around the streets, or before anybody was even at the finish shoot, to be honest. So I think there's probably a photograph of me at the finish shoot looking to my right as the camera crew didn't realize I was coming, because it actually showed me as DNF for the last 2 hours because the tracking was a bit off. So I was getting WhatsApps, which I didn't actually see till the finish, saying, "What happened? You couldn't possibly have DNF 2 hours before the finish. What are you doing?" But it just seemed to be a tracking issue. But yeah, I arrived and they weren't expecting me, so I just walked straight past them in a zombie-like state and I just said, "Give me the beer." I just wanted it. At the finish, had a beer and a cake and just sat down and then just basically conked out for 10 or 15 minutes before I went down to the sports centre to properly conk out.
And it must have felt strange finishing like that, and at that time of the morning, the shorts thing at the top of the descent, like your mind must take a while to not just process it, but you probably need to get some sleep, get some food, and then I don't know, how does it feel when you finished it? When you finished this?
Yeah, some people think it's anticlimactic, but to be honest, I just felt, yeah, that's that one done. And I now need to go to sleep. So I went down to the sports centre and onto their camp beds for, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours. And my hotel, to be fair, I stay with them every year. Hotel crew, they'd WhatsApp me saying your room was ready, but I just couldn't fucking go back up, to be honest. I was so wrecked. So I got back up there around 12 o'clock, I'd say, and had a shower. And then obviously couldn't get to sleep. So went back out and just started eating gelato, drinking Prosecco, eating cake, and watching all the rest of the Irish come in the Tour 330. That just kept going for 3 or 4 days, and just meeting all the other people I was running with in the Tour 450. So it was just a general festival of watching the suffering, but it was good to watch it rather than experience it.
It was such an adventure, and it's easy to think, problem solving the whole way as you do. But what were the main physical things that you had to deal with? I'm always blown away by how well the legs stay intact on the descent. It's just a huge amount of descending to put through the quads. How were the legs? Were you ever at a point where you were thinking, I'm going to use these poles to help me go downhill or ease some of the load?
Yeah, no, I mean, I if I'm not running downhill, I will use poles on the downhill, because it's something I used to not do before. But it's when you look at the likes of Sebastian and Luca and a few others, they all use the poles going downhill, and there's a reason for it. Protect the quads, and it makes a big difference. But you can also go pretty fast if you use them properly. So it takes a bit of training, but it actually works. But yeah, I mean, the day after I finished on the Thursday, the Friday morning, I went for a 5K run just to loosen out the legs. To be honest, the legs were fine. Still the lungs were still kind of in recovery mode, and took 3 or 4 days to get recovered, to be honest. But yeah, I pretty much had a jog every day. I was over there after the race, because when you're out in GOREWEAR, coming from Ireland, you got to make the most of it, irrespective of what race you've done. Keep enjoying the scenery in the mountains.
Were your feet not sore?
No. Didn't have any problems. The only thing that was sore was the hand.
Well, if we wrap up the podcast and we've gone through all of these details and the trials and tribulations, and then we finish it off that his feet weren't even sore, people will be going he's just something else. He's not the same as me. Surely your feet must have been some aches or blisters or nothing.
No, I had one blister, but I went down to the sports centre the second day to get a massage. As obviously there was loads of massage down there, and I went up on the table, and after 5 minutes, the physio just said, "There's nothing wrong with you. You don't need a massage. Go away." So
you were just in the routine of it.
Yeah, I just went away.
He must have been a good physio, because he could tell just by feeling you. Oh, you're grand. Away you go. Go back.
Yeah,
and,
the only thing
go back and have some ice cream.
The only thing physios kind of see when they go at massaging my legs is because of the injury I suffered in 2008. My left calf is about half the size of my right, so when you go down and you get to a physio that hasn't seen you before, they think you've got a blood clot in your right leg. Jesus, get him to a hospital quick, his calf is exploding, but it's just because the left one isn't connected to half the muscles aren't connected to anything.
Right. So the next few days must have been a lot of like really good fun and feel good because there was so many Irish people over, and the four other guys in the Glacier race, they were like the band of brothers going around the Iosta. It was amazing just to see the camaraderie and the messages come through in the Irish WhatsApp group. So that must have been like really good.
But I'll be honest, that was brilliant to have so many Irish both in the Tour 450 and Tour 330. To be honest, like the attrition rate in Tour 450 is 60%, and for 5 Irish to start and 5 Irish to finish is unprecedented, to be honest, from any country. So I'd say we're probably going to get banned from the race soon enough as a country. We're just too good at it. But like even the guys coming in the Tour 330, the likes of Paul Tierney and Ronan O'Farrell and Thomas DeVita and Pádraig Walsh, like he's spent 3 or 4 years trying to do the tour, and to see him come in this year was brilliant. Like it was way better, than, like, I didn't think much of my second place, to be honest. I thought us 5 finishing the Tour 450 was good. See Pádraig coming in the Tour 330 was even better, to be honest, because the amount of work that man's put into it was savage. Yeah. And shout out to the likes of Irene Finnegan as well, and Billy Reid, who didn't make it, but they're definitely vowing to come back. So it's good to hear. Nothing to prove, but they want to come back and prove it anyway.
Yeah. There was maybe 11 or 12 Irish in total across the 2 races, I think.
Yeah.
Why do you think like Tour has captured the imagination of so many Irish runners? Because small country, a lot of runners, like the way the lottery works for Tour, there's 2 guaranteed per country, and then after that the names are then drawn in the lottery. Or I mean, it's more complicated than that. But after I saw the 11, 12 people from Ireland, I was like, okay, I can't use an Irish address if I'm whenever I'm entering this race, because I'm pretty sure there's way more people in Ireland trying to get into Tour than there is in Australia, for example. So why do you think that it's captured the imagination of so many Irish runners?
I think Irish people enjoy the hardship. I think we're impervious to reason. I'd say we just enjoy the long multi-day stuff. But I think a lot of it probably goes back to, I suppose, the first few Irish to do it, like the Paul Tierneys of this world. I think people kind of, looked up to what they did and kind of said, Jesus, that looks good. We'll have a crack at that. And again, it's at the end of the day, it's a week in the mountains. What's not to like?
Yeah, and the same could be said about Ian Keith and the spine. That has made so many Irish people look at that race and go, oh, I maybe give that a go, or that's interesting because of Ian Keith.
Yeah, that's interesting for other people. I'm never doing it.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
So as we start to wrap up, we have the very simple question of trying to understand what is next whenever you have done so many of these long races and adventures. Like what's on the bucket list? I imagine you're going to be going back to Cormair for something many times. So what's still on the bucket list?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, as we said, the Grid USA Marathon is definitely up there. I'd like to have a crack at Hard Rock, but I just couldn't be arsed entering the lottery, because life's too short to waste time trying to figure out whether you're ever going to get in or not. So it's just not worth it. I might go to the States and do the Cocodona 200, maybe not next year, but the year after. But in real terms, next year is all about a couple of personal projects early in the year in Ireland, and then it's all to do with back-to-backs in July. So I'm going to do the World Masters at the end of June in the Czech Republic, and follow that with Crossing Switzerland and Grosslochner, which I did 2 years ago, or else E250 and E100. Because I stupidly said on the stage at the interview when I finished second there that considering I finished the E250 before the E100 started, that sure it would be a doddle to do both in the same year. So they've already emailed me saying, yeah, you said you'd do it. Are you doing it? So yeah, I must make that decision quick enough. And after that, I plan to go back to PTL this next year, and Swiss Peaks and Tour 450 back to back to back. Because I've seen that, like, Tour 450, with all that I did this year in Tour 450, I reckon I can take about 20 hours off that time. But the weather would have to be perfect. Everything would have to be perfect, and that mightn't happen again. So I'm going back to what I tried to do 2 years ago, the kind of double of Swiss Peaks and Tour 450, but it was the Swiss Peaks 660. So what I'm going to plan next year is PTL, Swiss Peaks 170 and Tour 450. So it's kind of like 3 weeks back to back of basically probably the bones of, I don't know, 1,000 kilometers and 70 or 80,000 meters of climbing. See if the body can handle it.
That's more like, I mean, you're racing more days than you're resting if you think about that 3+ week period of time. And even on those rest days, you're traveling to get to the start of the next adventure. What do you think?
It was a mistake. Yeah, it was a mistake I made in last year with Swiss Peak 660. I was using it as a training run, but because the time was getting so close to the start of Tour 450, I actually had to race the last 3 days. And basically, I finished that 23 hours before the start of Tour 450, so it kind of caught up with me on Tour 450 that year. But yeah, try not make that mistake next year.
Why? I mean, obviously, it's time in the mountains. It's a lot of time in the mountains, but why go at it in this style?
Yeah, it's just, I suppose it's kind of similar to what I used to do 20 years ago. Alpinism, just see what you can do. Like Alpinism is all about problem solving and all about, this is the route I want to do. Can I do it? So it's basically that type of mindset, just taking it further. So what can the body actually do? I know I can do 2 weeks solid racing. So I did prove that in Swiss Peak 660. So let's try do 3 weeks, see how we get on.
And do you look at these things as, I'm not sure, but I want to try?
Yeah, when it gets to that level, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you're still seeking that's just where the bleeding edge is for you. Yeah. It's the same as somebody trying 100-miler. I think I can do it, but I'm not sure.
In a nutshell, yeah, that's pretty much it. As I say, you've got to kind of keep going to the edge of the envelope. I don't know, as a T.S. Eliot said, only those who go so far to the edge of the envelope will never know how far they can go. Gotta go there and see how far the body can take you. But yeah, it's basically train for that next year and try not get injured. I'll throw in a couple of IMA races along the way, of course. But, yeah, I think I'll be honest. People talk to me about the second places this year in Europe. I think, to be honest, my best result this year was winning Carntool, getting your name on the same list as John Lennon. Like, I can retire now. Don't have to do any more.
Yeah,
so, people obviously not from Ireland won't probably recognise that, but it's a big time special one for an Irish mountain runner to get in that kind of hallowed Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's one of those few Irish mountain races that is special. It's like winning the Sleeve Donard race, I suppose.
Yeah.
Any interest in like doing the rounds?
Yeah, I've done the Bob Graham round, not officially. I've done it solo myself. So like I've done that. I plan to do the Ramsey and I plan to do the Paddy Buckley, but again, solo. It won't be a hype fest. It won't be a media fest. It won't be an any fest. There won't be anybody there probably to witness it. I'll just do it because I want to do it. Yeah, I'll do the Wicklow round at some stage and the Connemara round. And I've a round in my head myself, which will hopefully happen in the next year or two. Might be added to a list, but we'll see. But yeah, I know there's something that they interest me. All right, the Bob Graham is probably a lot easier than what it was back in the day. There's tracks and trenches around half of it now. Yeah, it was a good day. It was a good day out in the Lake District. Can't complain about it.
The Connemara round looks an interesting one. That was just sort of coming on the scene as I was moving out of Ireland. Otherwise, it would have been one that caught my attention.
It's probably the hardest of the 3 Irish rounds. The Ramsey I must do yet as well up in the Mourns, but the Connemara round is a proper day out. Right, the terrain is pretty rough, but to be fair, Donald McMorland put in a serious time there. So yeah, it'll be a tricky one to beat, I'd say.
Yeah, he's very good at that type of thing.
Not that I'm going to be beating it. I'm just going to do it.
Exactly. Yes, of course. Out for the adventure. Look, Brian, this has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate your time. And given that we're in different hemispheres, I guess I'll just see you in the Alps next year.
Yep, exactly. Listen, thanks, Aaron. Good to talk.